Twist.io.
Good morning, folks. I'm supposed to be joined by my partner, Huff, but as you know, Huff is an anesthesiologist. He cannot always predict when he's going to be available, and he can't make it this morning, so I'm going solo. However, I'm going to talk about something that fascinates a great deal of people, and that's the creation of graphic literature. I've been involved in graphic literature my whole life since creating Nexus with Steve Rude in 1981. I owe my career to Nexus. When they asked me to give them a superhero, I wanted to do something different. I did not want to do another anodyne superhero, and we'll get into that later. But I chose to make my character a reluctant executioner of mass murderers 500 years in the future. And for those who are not familiar with the book, let me just show you a graphic of what Nexus looks like. This book would not have succeeded without Steve Rude's brilliant art. But the writing was pretty good too. And this is the cover to The Old General, which was a seminal issue here. The Old General had committed mass murder against his own people, but years later he realized what a mistake he had made. And the issue is about how people can change. And when Nexus met him, he was deeply regretful and spiritual. He was not the same person. And Nexus realized he had no choice because Nexus is being driven by an insane alien who sends him the dreams. So this was one of his most difficult executions. But it's not the one that garnered all the attention. Let me show you that one. When we went to Dark Horse, I think it was in 1991 or 92, we asked to redo the origin story. And this was a rewrite of the first issue that we did in 1981. It was 10 years later. And I was excited to do that because I felt I could improve on the story. And apparently a number of people agreed with me because this is the issue that won us numerous Eisners and Inkbot awards and cemented Nexus in the public imagination. We are now collecting every issue of Nexus in the massive Nexus Omnibus. It is at the printer right now. It's 888 pages for the first issue, and we will begin fulfillment in December. If you're interested in purchasing the Omnibus, it can be had at baroncomics.com, as can all my books. I am working on future Nexus projects. I wish I could tell you with whom. They're very exciting. We hope to make an announcement early next year, as some of them near completion. But let's get back to graphic literature in general. When I was much in demand in the industry throughout the 80s, a couple of projects were dropped in my lap, which I could not refuse, and they involved adapting novels into graphic novels. One of them, of course, was Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire, which was a trilogy. I love adapting novels into graphic novels. In order for me to be really comfortable, I have to have the book in my hand. You know why? Because I can mark that book up. I can mark a page. I can use a highlight pen, a yellow, a red for different meanings. And then I can flip through it and find it right when I need it and work from the book. Now I am working from some texts on a new adaptation of a work of literature, which is not a novel. It's a factual story. And I have to go back and forth on the document, the Word document, on my computer, which I don't enjoy. I've never enjoyed working on a computer. I don't mind writing on it, but it's a miracle I can use this computer. As I say, it's a miracle I'm on camera right now. It probably wouldn't be possible without Pops Van Zandt, who enables this program. And we will have Huff back here as soon as he's able. But to get to graphic literature, I just read a book that, for me, personifies many of the best elements. And that book is, hang on, share screen. Here we go. This book was adapted by John K. Snyder. It's Lawrence Block's 8 Million Ways to Die. Now, for people who don't know who Lawrence Block is, he's a master of the modern noir. What is noir? It's a story that looks at the less savory aspects of human nature, often downbeat, and it often ends in tragedy. Some of the classic noirs are Nightmare Alley, which has been made into a movie twice, the first with Tyrone Power, the second with Bradley Cooper, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I recommend them both. The first is actually better. It's black and white, but it's about an opportunist who joins a carnival in order to learn how to fake being a mind reader and a fortune teller so that he can scam an ever rising clientele out of their money by telling them things, where to invest, what's going to happen. And he rises inexorably through society. And as he rises, he discards all his old associates until finally he reaches the top. And he's trying to scam this billionaire. But the billionaire catches on, takes out a contract on him. So he has to disappear. But let's get back to 8 Million Ways to Die. It stars Block's creation, Matthew Scudder, who's an archetype of the tarnished knight, probably established most prominently by Raymond Chandler with his Philip Marlowe character, or the Sam Spade character created by Dashiell Hammett. And if you want to know what I mean, you got to watch The Maltese Falcon starring Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart played both Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe at various times, and no one did it better. I mean, Bogart just personifies the tarnished hero, and part of it is his sardonic tone. He takes a sardonic tone of voice with so many things. Now, Matthew Scudder is different. Matthew Scudder used to be a police officer, and he quit the force when he was involved in a shooting. It was fully justified, but a bullet of his ricocheted and killed a young girl, and it shattered him, and he started drinking. And for many years, he was a hopeless alcoholic. And then he started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a recurring theme throughout the book. Him going to Alcoholics Anonymous back and forth, sometimes slipping, sometimes taking a drink. In this story, he agrees to find out who killed a lady of the night's best friend. And the art is appropriately dark, because these stories are dark. And one thing that John did, and I've never seen this done before in a graphic novel, is how he planted so much text from the novel, which would never happen in an original graphic novel, certainly not one that I wrote. But you know what? The text is compelling, and I read every word. So I recommend this. This is one of the best adaptations I've ever read. It's almost like reading the novel, because you get the flavor of Block's writing style. And I often talk about the narrative voice. You get his narrative voice, which is devoid of self-pity, but unflinching, unblinking when he looks at himself and when he looks at others. And there are unexpected moments of humor that rise out of it too. Let me take this down here because I've plugged that enough. I've done a lot of adaptations and I'm working on more. And it's a way of getting your literature before an audience who would not otherwise see it. It's also a way of parlaying a property into a film property. This is, Hollywood is bereft right now. We've all gone to the movies and come out and say, well, that's $7 I wasted. And I'm not going to name any movies. We all know what they are, and many of them are associated with comic book properties. We go see that movie because we love the character, and we come out and say, that's not the character I love, and it wasn't very entertaining. Hollywood seems to be bereft of new ideas. There are exceptions. I just saw a movie called Caught Stealing that was directed by Darren Aronofsky, and it stars Butler. I'm drawing a blank here. Liev Schreiber is in it too. And it's about a young man who gets drawn into a net of intrigue involving stolen drug money. And it was compelling and grabs you by the throat, which is what I try to do with my literature, what any good movie should do. It takes place in 1970s New York City. And it gets the era just right. But the people that it involves are so off the wall, but they're credible. Like, there are two Hasidic Jews. One's a rabbi, and they're also contract killers. And when they were first introduced, I said, people aren't going to buy that, but you get to know them, and you do buy it. Austin Butler is the name of the young actor. He first rose to fame in that Elvis movie that was directed by the Australian Elvis. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a very good movie. It's visually off the wall. And then Austin Butler did The Bike Riders, which also stars Tom Hardy, about one of the first motorcycle gangs in the country. And that's compelling too. And I wish that both Austin Butler and Tom Hardy would get better roles. I mean, I love Tom Hardy. And I'm glad that he's making a big payday off of Venom, but I would rather see him in more dramatic roles. And I understand that they're making a movie out of Peaky Blinders. It should be done by now, and I'm waiting for it to come out. And if you haven't seen Peaky Blinders, it's on Netflix. It's about a criminal gang in Europe, in England, in the 1920s and 30s. And it hits hard. It's very compelling. It's brilliantly written. And the funny thing about it is whoever directs it is bam, dead center on everything. You know, you'll see a director who will frame a shot so that the protagonist is on the left side or on the right side, or he's standing on a ladder, or he's sitting in a chair on the right side. Whoever directs these Peaky Blinders focuses right in on where the action is, front and center, even if it's just a person talking. That usually doesn't work for me, but it works here. But to get back to graphic literature, a lot of people want to know how to do it. Everybody thinks they know how to do a comic, and everybody does. I've been seeing an awful lot of self-published comics lately, and a lot of them are in the superhero vein. It's a mistake to pattern your superhero after other superheroes. What we get is an anodyne superhero. By that, I mean it's a character that's neither fish nor fowl and not particularly exciting because everything is borrowed from somebody else, something else. You have to be original. You have to make your character stand out. Well, how do you do that? How do you create a compelling character? I always point to Sherlock Holmes as the example that everybody understands. Everybody understands that Sherlock Holmes is a unique personality. It's not just his brilliant mind. It's the fact that he's obviously autistic, like Elon Musk, and has a problem relating to people on an intimate level. So that when he expresses his affection for somebody, and it's mostly men, it's mostly Doc Watson, it's completely asexual, but it's also very difficult for him to do. And he knows he has to do it because it's expected of him and he wants to do it. He doesn't want to be the way he is, but he accepts that that's the way he is. When I create a character, I will sometimes pattern him on somebody I know. This is kind of it's not a cheat. I mean, so many writers have done this, like F. Scott Fitzgerald in The Great Gatsby, which is obviously based on people he knew, and Hemingway with The Sun Also Rises, which is obviously based on people he knew in Paris in the 20s. And if you can write, you can turn it into great literature. People say, well, that's not true recreation because you're just writing something that you already experienced and you're just changing the names. Well, yes, it is, because first of all, you can't just write about what happened. You have to have a seductive narrative voice. And I've been over this many times, and people are probably sick and and tired of hearing about it. By that I mean you have to use words in such a way that the reader enters completely into the story to the exclusion of all else. So that you're reading a book and the wife comes in and says, honey, dinner's ready. And you say, not now, not now. Let me finish this chapter. And that's because the narrative has a hold on you. And that's what you want to do, not just in straight literature, but in graphic novels too. You can write a compelling story that's hard to put down. A couple of examples that come to mind are Frank Miller's Daredevil and Alan Moore's Watchmen, both of which are outstanding examples of using the medium to its full effect. Comics are a medium like any other. You can use them to tell any kind of story. You can tell a love story, a thriller, a military, horror, science fiction. They're ideally suited to science fiction because of the visuals. But believe it or not, they're not suited to horror. Horror is the worst comics are the worst medium for horror. And we all love horror comics, and they sell very well. Go figure. I'm doing them right now. I mean, Bronze Star is a horror comic. It's a Western. It's a supernatural Western. But it has horror elements in it. And for people who don't know, the first Bronze Star sold out, was a huge critical success. We're reprinting it for the campaign that's live now. I'm going to post that in a minute. But the thing about Bronze Star is it's called Bronze Star because the sheriff can't wear silver. And the reason he can't wear silver is because he's a werewolf. And 3 nights a week, 3 nights a month, he has to leave the tiny town of Cobb's Gap so he doesn't eat the citizens. And this is what Harley Brogdon discovers when he ends up in Cobb's Gap after fleeing a posse that's been raised by a wealthy landowner. Harley was in a card game in Wyoming, and the man opposite accused him of cheating, and Harley denied it. And the man stood and went for his gun, so Harley automatically shot him. It was self-defense. Everybody saw it. But that doesn't cut the mustard with the man's wealthy landowner who will stop at nothing to chase Harley to the ends of the earth and see him hang, which is how Harley ends up in Cobb's Gap in the first place. Cobb's Gap is a tiny town at the foot of the Canadian Mounties. The Canadian Rockies. There are no Mounties because the Mounties weren't created until the 1860s. But for about a week, there was a silver rush to Cobb's Gap because there was a mine there that had silver. But then strange things happened in the mine, and people who kept going in didn't come out. They died. They died from rattlesnake bites. They died from cave-ins, and some killed themselves. And eventually, it got a reputation as being haunted. And the news of the reputation spread down through the lower 38 states. This was in 1880. So people stopped going to Cobb's Gap because it was a hell of a long way to get there, and there's nothing there. The people who live there are just tired of running. And every time Harley sees a new person in Cobb's Gap, they say, what are you running from? And he says, why do you think I'm running? And they say, because Cobb's Gap is the ass end of nowhere, and nobody goes there unless they have to. So there are a number of fugitives hiding in Cobb's Gap, and that's part of the story. We started the supernatural theme and then decided to prolong it in Bronze Star number 2. Let me bring that up. Yeah, baby. Forgive me, it's a miracle I can use this TV, as I say. And this is the campaign. Let me see if I can spread that out. How do we do that? Here we go. Hang on. Yeah. All right. Now, if I can just find my way back. Here we go.
In the lawless, unforgiving Old West, one man tried to bury his past, only to discover that some nightmares never stay buried. Newly appointed Sheriff Harley Brogdon thought he'd left trouble behind, until ancient terrors from Native American legend clawed their way out of the cold earth. Bronze Star 2 is the thrilling continuation of the critically acclaimed Weird Western series by Eisner Award-winning writer Mike Baron and legendary artist Pat Broderick, co-creator of Creature Commandos. Return to Cobb's Gap, where every bullet fired is a deadly gamble, and every shadow may conceal an unimaginable horror. The legend rides again, deeper into darkness, into a series of hellish nightmares that will haunt you long after the final page. 2 chilling journeys into the heart of the Weird West await you in Bronze Star 2. Pre-order the pulse-pounding sequel now at fundmycomic.com.
Well, that's it, folks. That's the blurb. We're very proud of it. Let me get rid of that. And I'm back. Somewhere in there. Oh, yeah. There we go. I'm in the show. There I am. Thanks, Pops. You don't know this, but Pops Van Zandt is the man behind this show. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be podcasting this today. And he's the guy that restores me to the image because I can't do it myself. I mean, I can do it myself when I'm running StreamYard just for myself. But I have Pops working with me because through him, I reach a much wider audience, including Roku. And this is being recorded, by the way, and you're seeing it Saturday evening, which is when it's going to be posted. And that's good because it gives me time to think about this stuff.
Thursday evening, Mike. Thursday.
Thanks, Pops. That's, Pops comes in like the voice of God there, and he does sound a little like God, doesn't he? He says, Thursday evening, folks. It will be posted Thursday evening. And when that happens, I'll post it all over so you'll know about it on social media. But let's get back to...
If God was Tommy Chong, Mike. If God was Tommy Chong.
Well, that's funny because every day I get multiple messages from Cheech and Chong urging me to buy their chewables. Now, this is Colorado where marijuana is legal. And I've tried the chewables. The chewables will lay you out on your ass for up to 20 hours. You won't be able to move. I'm not doing any more chewables. In fact, it's been years since I smoked any marijuana. I used to think I needed it to write. But then I stopped and my writing got better. Now, this isn't a result of me no longer doing drugs. It's a result of me maturing as a writer and getting a greater understanding of story. For those of you who want to write, once you understand story, what goes into story, you don't make a wrong turn. You don't write something and say, oh no, is this any good? Will somebody read this for me and tell me if they like it or anything like that? Then you give it to your wife or good friend. They read it. Yeah, this is great. Well, that's not necessarily honest feedback or correct feedback. They may believe it. But the only way to know for sure is if somebody's going to pay money for it. Samuel Johnson said, no man but a blockhead writes for any reason other than money. Well, how do you test whether you can write or not? Short stories. Short stories are the way to go. You can write a short story in a day, and then you start sending it out to markets. There are 1,000 markets for short stories out there. All you have to do is search for them on the webs. Search for Western short story markets, horror short story markets, science fiction short story markets, romance, espionage, any genre you like. There's somebody out there willing to publish it and pay you money. And that's how you get positive feedback. And when that story comes out and gets rejected, you send it out again, but you also write another one. You keep those short stories coming. I get ideas from anywhere. You never know where inspiration will hit. My short story, Trail of the Loathsome Swine, first of all, it came from the title. There was an old Western starring James Stewart called Trail of the Lonesome Pine. And I read about it, and in my twisted mind, I turned it into Trail of the Loathsome Swine. And that ran around in my head for years until one day I read a news report about a boy, a 16-year-old boy who had shot a 1,000-pound feral hog with his .357 Magnum. And there's a picture of it. And I would be delighted to show you that picture. And that's where the story came from. And it's being released in a collection of short stories, which I'm doing shortly from Critical Blast. And I'll post the information on my web page and on on social media. This is the picture that inspired me to write Trail of the Loathsome Swine. That's a real picture. It's a real kid. That's his pistol. And there's the 1,000-pound feral hog. That's a lot of bacon. It's a lot of ham. I always wonder, did they cut it up and eat it? And at one point, I looked it up on the internet. I said, can you eat feral hog? And the answer is, of course you can eat feral hog. You have to be a little careful of parasites. And that's why you cook it real good. But nobody's going to eat raw pork anyway. So keep that in mind. That's the inspiration for Trail of the Loathsome Swine. In fact, I get a lot of information from news stories. One news story, well, and you get inspiration, you can get it anywhere. That's why I carry a notepad and pen with me at all times. And I advise everybody else to do it too, whether you write or not. Because if you write it down, you'll find it. You'll be able to, there's a place you can go to find it. And they say, well, I just make notes in my phone notepad. I said, well, you can do that. But sooner or later, the Chinese are going to launch their massive, giant electromagnetic pulse over North America to knock out our internet, and then it'll be gone forever, which is why I urge everyone to carry a pad like this. You've all seen this pad 1,000 times. You see it 1,000 times more.
Not only that, but that's why you buy physical copies of your comics, yo.
That's right. And not only that, but CDs and DVDs. When I was a kid, I learned that I could get free records by writing about them. I went over to a friend's house. He had an underground newspaper called Takeover. This was at the University of Wisconsin. And it was all up against the wall, motherfucker, and sticking it to the man. And he had all these records, brand new records, still sealed in plastic, hundreds of them leaning against the wall. I said, Mark, where did you get these records? And he says, the record company sent them to me. You want some? Take them. Just write something about them. And so the bug bit. And, I'm still doing it today. I still write about music, mostly power pop. And I do it just to get the free CDs. And I have a huge collection of CDs. And every time I look at that collection, I see 50 records I haven't listened to in years. And I remember how good they are. I also see 25 more that are no good, and I'm trying to get rid of those. Power pop is an idiom that involves driving upbeat rock and roll music with bridges and hooks, and that's the important part. By that I mean they have at least 3 chords, sometimes many more. If you listen to Electric Light Orchestra, you know what I'm talking about. The progenitors of power pop are the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Byrds, just for starters. And that's just one letter of the alphabet. I could use any letter of the alphabet, except for Z and X possibly, and cite a dozen brilliant bands. These people do it out of a love for the music. The music industry has changed so drastically over the years, partly because tastes have changed, and partly because technology has changed. When I was a kid, the big record companies were signing up any band that had a good sound. That's how we got the Grateful Dead, the Doors, the Beatles, the Yardbirds, the Hollies, so many great bands. But today, the big record companies rarely sign up a band like that, where the music sticks in your mind and you hum it and you sing it. And when it comes on the radio, you turn the volume way up. But there are still hundreds, if not thousands, of these bands who are determined to make their mark. And so they record records, often brilliant records. And there's very little return on them unless you strike it rich. The only way to strike it rich these days is to go viral on social media. You look at Billie Eilish. She went viral, and now she's a millionaire. But it hasn't happened to a power pop band in a long time. And I don't know why that is, because a lot of these bands are young. They're kids. A lot of them are middle-aged, and they've been around for 30 years, and they're still hanging in there. But most of them have day jobs. I recommend there's a site called Power Popaholic if you're interested in that type of music, and he keeps track of the very latest, and he writes honest reviews, which are highly reliable. Uh, and I'd start posting music here or there, but that would kill the rest of the show. Uh, and I think I should get back to comics now, or if we prefer graphic literature. So if you're going to do a superhero comic, one thing you don't want to do, as everybody thinks they have to do, is open with a big action sequence on the first page. People are flying through the air, being ripped apart, guns are being fired, spaceships are dropping bombs, and then there's 4 or 5 caption boxes saying, well, how did we get here? The Anasazi are attacking. Where's my right flank? And then you turn the page and it says 6 weeks earlier, and they go back and they fill it in, or they try to fill it in. You can do that, and a lot of movies do that, and some are very successful. But in order to do that, you have to be a skilled writer, which means the words themselves have to have a power over you, devoid of the pictures. They can't just tell you what you're already seeing. They have to provide some intrigue, and to do that, you have to provide some original thought. I go back to Nexus. My idea that he was a reluctant executioner of mass murderers who appeared to him in dreams, and he would wake up in a cold sweat, trembling in terror, and knew that if he didn't track them down and kill them, the dreams would recur until they drove him mad. That was an original thought back then. If you get an original thought for a superhero these days, give your thanks to God, because that's hard to do. Every superhero I see, every new one is an imitation of another superhero. Superheroes are themselves an inherently juvenile concept. Superman was created by 2 18-year-olds, and I don't mean to denigrate the form, because I love superheroes myself. They don't have to be a juvenile concept. In the hands of a skilled storyteller, they can be compelling for all ages. I look at the first Superman movie starring Christopher Reeve. Everybody loves that. Some fairly recent movies like Wolverine and Deadpool are outrageously entertaining, because the concept is anything goes, and they understand that their main mission is to entertain. That's always job one: entertain. If you don't entertain the reader, he's not going to turn the page. If you don't entertain the viewer, he's going to walk out of the theater. Well, they're highly entertaining. No one takes them seriously because they're action comedies, and we all understand that an action comedy is designed to make you laugh. In fact, laughs arise more easily out of a violent situation than they do out of a placid situation, which is why it's so hard for straight comedies to entertain audiences these days. For one reason is the writers are afraid of offending anyone. Well, comedy is rude. All comedy is based on tragedy. I think Mark Twain said that. So if you're not willing to offend anyone, you can't really be funny. You look at Dave Chappelle, you look at his shows, and Dave's a brave guy because he's not afraid to offend people to make you laugh. And of course, well-adjusted people have learned to laugh at themselves. So that's not a big problem. But if you're going to do a superhero comic, start with the character. Who is he? How did he get to be the way he is? Do not start with a list of his superpowers. That's the tail wagging the dog. First of all, you have to know who he is and what motivates him. And then you worry about where the superpowers come from. Now, maybe he was born with those powers. If that's the case, don't tell us. Show us. Introduce the character. Let us see him in everyday life. And then when the circumstances arrive, he demonstrates his powers. Well, when do they arrive? This is very important, is that these developments have to rise organically out of the narrative. And here's a trope that's been used 1,000 times and that's because it works. As a guy's walking down the street and he sees a man assaulting a woman, or a man assaulting a child, or a man assaulting a dog, and he takes action. And we can all recognize that and empathize it, because many of us would do the same thing. So there's the hook on which you hang your story. And then the guy turns out to be a 300-pound monster is attacking him, and our hero waves at him, and suddenly he floats up into the air. And all of a sudden we realize this guy is not a normal human being. It may even come as a surprise to the hero. He did not know he could do it until that moment. There are a lot of heroes who don't understand their powers until they suffer from extreme stress. And that's when the powers manifest themselves. In fact, there was a great science fiction story, I can't think of the name, but they would torture people to force them to demonstrate teleportation, because the only way they could manifest their ability to teleport was under extreme duress and pain. And that always stuck with me. It's a good trope, and you can use it. You can use anything that's been done before as long as you make it your own. They say there are only 7 original plots in all of fiction. But as the scholar says, it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. So you use a compelling character who speaks in a unique manner. It's so important that your characters, whether they're superheroes or gumshoes or a lady tennis player, that when they speak, it sounds like real people talk. And to do that, you just have to have a good ear. That's one reason I carry the notepad, is I eavesdrop everywhere I go. And if I hear a new turn of phrase, and I know what it means, but I haven't heard it before, or I haven't heard it in years, I write it down. And I'll give it to someone. And one example I have is the Italians have a unique way of expressing themselves. And Mad Magazine used to use it all the time when they were featuring an Italian family in a cartoon strip, often drawn by Mort Drucker. And the mother would be yelling at the child, "Sharapa, you face." You know what that means? I bet you can guess what that means. It means shut up. And I knew that instantly. Sharapa, you face. And that was a staple in Italian families in the 19th and 20th centuries. You don't hear it these days, but you can use it because it's always good. Another things they pioneered was forget about it. FUGGEDABOUDIT. Forget about it. One word. Instantly recognizable. Instantly identifies the speaker as being of Italian heritage, with maybe a great wealth of language behind him. And those are a couple of tips. And if you're wondering, does it sound like a real human being? You read it out loud. Does it sound like a real human being talking to you? Have you ever heard it before? Read it to your friends, read it to your neighbors, and ask them, does this sound natural? And they'll tell you. Very important. Make the language sound the way real people talk. And, I think that's about all the advice I have for today. So, Pops, we're gonna cut this one short. You there?
I am here, my friend. All right. We're going to play a couple of ads and we're going to be out of here. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Show the ads, Pops.
What do we got? We got this one. You like this one. Peace, everybody.
Ozzy, what are you doing? Come and have a look at this lovely book that was sent over.
You're wrapping in the burning.
Oh, go on and spit the bat out your mouth. No one can understand you like that.
Say how 5 dentists and all.
Oh, well, that's not much better. Ozzy, why don't you sing to me? I can always understand you when you sing to me.
Fucking my brains. What is this my publisher sent me? Inked in black with art so sweet.
So what do you think? Do you like it?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
In a world where sequels and prequels and derivative slop rule the TV and movie landscape, one magazine dares to make fun of them all. One mag to roast them all. One mag to troll them. One mag to break their balls. And in the ratings roll them.
Cut!
If you missed the live viewing of any Madness Entertainment Group production, you can find all our content on Roku or as a member of this channel. We'll see you next time on the Madness Entertainment